Have you ever noticed that your organization hires expensive consultants to solve a problem? The consultants give a brilliant report, and then management does the opposite of the consultant's recommendations, or does nothing at all? Then, predictably, everyone pretends nothing happened. Putting aside for a moment the fact that the consultants likely applied the same rationality to solve the problem that created the problem in the first place, there is a term, I believe, for this madness. As an independent thinker, I recently coined a new concept, at least to my knowledge, in attempting to diagnose the unique, soul-crushing despair of modern organizational life. The feeling of being trapped in a system that is utterly paradoxical and insane. To describe this specific modern nightmare, I took two heavy, distinct concepts from the history of philosophy, combined them, and coined the brand new term Aporial Benightment. If you search academic databases or sociology textbooks for that exact phrase, you won't find it yet. It is a term I coined after looking directly into the machinery of modern work to give our collective existential dread a name. And the moment you break down what those two words actually mean, you realize the concept makes total sense. Let's break the jargon down. Aporia is an ancient Greek word meaning an unresolvable puzzle, a logical dead end, a contradiction so profound that your mind simply cannot resolve it. Benightment means to be overthrown by night, to exist in the state of complete intellectual darkness or ignorance. It is the antithesis of enlightenment. Paradoxically, it can be argued that Enlightenment thought actually benighted humanity, but that's a topic for a separate video essay. Aporial benightment is a pathological intellectual paralysis and profound ignorance born out of a structural or illogical contradiction or paradox. The organization and its leaders become incapable of learning and are blinded because the very foundational logic, culture, or structures within which they operate are contradictory. Aporial benightment can also describe the state in which an organization or its leaders are trapped in an irresolvable contradiction of their own making, but remain completely unaware of it or actively choose to ignore it, while simultaneously not realizing that their own rational logic created the very irresolvable contradiction plaguing the organization. Today we are going to look at the anatomy of this concept. We are going to explore why contemporary organizations force you to choose intellectual darkness, why humanity at large is completely blind to its own exploitation, and how this brilliant linguistic synthesis explains why highly educated, creative human beings are systematically transformed into comfortably numb cogs. To understand how aporial benigntment takes root, we have to look at the structural environment that breeds it. It starts with what sociologists call the irrationality of rationality. Modern organizations are obsessed with being rational. They want everything quantified, optimized, standardized, and tracked. In the early 20th century, the sociologist Max Weber warned us that this relentless drive for efficiency would trap humanity in an iron cage, stripping the world of magic, meaning, and individual freedom. To fully understand what Weber meant by the iron cage, we need to return to the original term he used in his German writings. Weber employed the term Stahlhartes Gehäuse, meaning shell hard as steel. In 1930, Harvard sociologist Talcott Parsons translated Weber's text, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, in which he translated Stahlhartes Gehäuse as iron cage in English. While Parsons' motivation for doing so is a topic for another video essay, suffice it to say that there is a difference between an external iron cage in which humanity is trapped and the original German term Stahlhartes Gehäuse. In the English-speaking world, Weber's work is generally interpreted in alignment with the concept of the iron cage. A shell hard as steel, however, implies an artificial exoskeleton, and in the context of Weber's work, this is one which is created by the pursuit of material wealth and efficiency that has trapped our inner life. Thus, while it is true that humanity is trapped in an iron cage of its own making, as the term iron cage would imply, The actual issue Weber conveyed was the fact that the very rational systems, such as rigid bureaucracies and capitalist structures, reshape human consciousness. Our thinking becomes so entrapped by a specific type of logic that the result is deeply irrational action. We are benighted by the very rational, enlightened logic we purport to employ. This is one example of the irrationality of rationality. Decades later, thinkers from the Frankfurt school like Max Horkheimer took this further. They argued that we had split human intelligence into objective reason and instrumental reason. We discarded objective reason, the ability to ask ethical questions like, what is a good life, and became obsessed with instrumental reason, which only asks questions such as, how do we calculate and execute a task faster? When an organization focuses entirely on the means and completely forgets the ends, the system flips into absolute irrationality. Let's look at a real-world example of this flip. Assume that an organization demands maximum employee well-being, or at least pays lip service to this demand, but at the same time the organization simultaneously increases workloads and cuts resources due to alleged budgetary constraints. The organization has created incompatible goals. This immediately creates an aporia, a brutal, unresolvable contradiction. The rational capitalistic business model is sabotaging employee well-being, while organizational leaders, following the script of the latest fad, tout that the organization emphasizes employee well-being. The benightment typically takes one of two forms. In the first form, the organization's leaders are unaware of the contradiction because the irrational rationality of the logic of capitalism always takes priority above all else. In its second form, the benightment could manifest as leaders and the entire organization engaging in willful blindness, while using corporate jargon, toxic positivity, or endless cycles of superficial restructuring and change initiatives to hide the aporia of its own creation. In this instance, Aporial Benightment is the maintenance of ignorance in the face of impossible organizational paradoxes. If you are a teacher forced to teach to a standardized test rather than inspire students, your brain experiences intense, agonizing cognitive dissonance. You are forced to look at a reality where doing a good job for the system means doing a bad job for humanity. Living in that contradiction is emotionally exhausting. So how does the human mind cope? It triggers benightment. It turns off the lights. The worker stops asking big moral questions and focuses strictly on ticking the boxes required by the software. The worker chooses intellectual darkness because navigating the contradiction is simply too heavy a burden to carry, and this assumes the worker can even identify the underlying contradiction. But if this system is so obviously contradictory, how does it maintain control over us? One explanation can be found in post-structuralist philosophy. Imagine walking into a prison where there are no guards in sight, yet every inmate behaves perfectly. This is the Panopticon, a brilliant, chilling architectural design where a central watchtower is surrounded by a ring of backlit cells. Because of the clever lighting, the inmates can never see into the tower, meaning they never know exactly when they are being watched, but they know they might be watched at any given second. In his philosophical work, Michel Foucault realized that this architecture isn't just for jails. It is the ultimate blueprint for how modern organizations quietly and effectively crush employee critique and dissent. In the corporate world, the watchtower isn't made of brick and mortar. It's made from electronic logs, email audits, public performance metrics, and peer reviews. When you operate in an environment where your visibility is absolute and surveillance is constant yet invisible, something profound happens to your psychology. You naturally censor your own radical ideas and uncomfortable truths before they ever leave your fingertips or lips. The true genius and terror of the Panoptic organization is that management no longer needs to play the role of the heavy-handed dictator, although many managers who suffer from any number of psychopathologies derive pleasure from acting in this way. Instead, employees willingly become their own wardens. Because the gaze of the organization is internalized, workers constantly ask themselves how a critique will affect their career, or whether pointing out a flaw will label them as not a team player. This hypervisible environment breeds a culture of normalization, where it is vastly safer to conform to a comfortable consensus than to risk standing out. Even when organizations offer sanctioned feedback channels like anonymous surveys or town halls, these often function merely as bureaucratic venting valves designed to neutralize dissent. Ultimately, Foucault's Panopticon stifles critique not by locking people up or issuing threats, but by creating a culture of anxiety and self-policing, ensuring that employees voluntarily trade their critical voices for the safety of compliance. Critique is stifled, and aporias remain unnamed and unaddressed. Over time, this stifling can result in the benightment of even the most critical thinkers in the organization. Returning to Weber's Stahlhartes Gehäuse, we find that the aporias were created by the irrationality of rationality. They remain because cognition is entrapped within a hardened steel encasement of rationality, and any critique that may arise is stifled by the panoptic gaze of the organizational jail. Of course, there is another possible explanation for this phenomenon in critical theory, but that requires a separate video essay. This permanent self-surveillance leads to a bizarre hyperreal consequence. The French philosopher Jean Baudrillard argued that modern society has completely detached itself from physical reality, replacing it with symbols and metrics, what he called simulacra. In today's corporate landscape, we often find ourselves trapped within these simulacra, hyperreal twilight zones where the representation of reality completely replaces reality itself. In the modern workplace, this means that the glossy brand, the mission statement, and the colorful KPI dashboard are valued far more than the actual work or human beings they are supposed to represent. In organizational contexts, the simulacra manifest as managerialism ex extremo. This detachment creates a playground for maddening organizational paradoxes. We are ordered to be aggressively innovative yet strictly compliant, or we are surrounded by ping-pong tables and wellness seminars that serve as mere illusions of a psychological safety that does not actually exist. In this hall of mirrors, looking productive on a spreadsheet completely swallows the ability to do deep, meaningful work, forcing employees into a state of simulated compliance just to survive. This reliance on simulation, a concept drawn from Baudrillard's philosophizations of simulacra and hyperreality, ultimately plunges companies into a state of structural benightment, a profound collective blindness and intellectual darkness. When leadership manages the company strictly through sanitized HR surveys and green-lit status reports, they fall victim to dashboard blindness, mistaking the comforting map for the crumbling territory. Because the official signs say everything is perfect, executives become willfully blind to systemic risks, cratering morale, and operational decay. Anyone who dares to point out a real-world flaw is dismissed as a disruptor, because the organization prefers the safety of its fake victories over the friction of truth. Ultimately, the simulacrum ensures that modern organizations operate as haunted houses of their own making, celebrating flawless paper trails while remaining completely benighted to the lived reality of their own workforce. Why don't we collectively stand up and say, this simulation is madness? Beyond economic factors, another major factor keeping us blind is the fragmentation of labor. German political theorist Hannah Arendt coined the phrase the banality of evil. She noted that catastrophic outcomes can be achieved in modern society simply because individuals focus entirely on the technical efficiency of their tiny, specialized task while completely divorcing themselves from the ultimate outcome. Modern organizations have perfected this fragmentation. Almost no one manages a process from an ethical beginning to a human end. Instead, work is sliced into micro-tasks, In many cases, the focus on micro-tasks occludes the larger picture, while toxic organizational jargon linked to the latest fad serves to further conceal serious systemic problems and contradictions. If working employees into an early grave while touting the organization's commitment to employee well-being is an evil and cruel paradox fueled by an overarching rationality of capitalism, then Arendt's analysis is thought on. The data analyst, for instance, optimizes the ad tracking algorithm. The user experience designer makes the interface harder to close. The copywriter drafts an addictive notification. None of these individuals feel responsible for the ultimate outcome, which might be a massive mental health crisis. The analyst says, "I just ran the data." The designer says, "I just polished the buttons." Because the overarching contradiction is fragmented across 1,000 departments, the macro insanity becomes entirely invisible to the people creating it. The division of labor is a machine for manufacturing systemic blindness. The second factor keeping us blind is a brutal material reality, the economic cost of clarity. Let's be entirely honest with ourselves. Waking up from Aporial Benightment, shedding the darkness and seeing the system with absolute clarity, is an immense luxury that most people simply cannot afford. Imagine you are a mid-level analyst, a project manager, or an administrative assistant. You have a mortgage, student loans, or childcare costs. Your health care is tied directly to your employment. If you suddenly stand up in the middle of a quarterly alignment meeting, assuming you have even cognitively escaped the Stahlhartes Gehäuse, and say, "Wait a minute, this entire strategy is a hyperreal simulation. We are just chasing empty data points that have no relation to reality, and we are burning ourselves out to make a spreadsheet look prettier." What happens to you? You don't get a promotion for your philosophical breakthrough. You get labeled as cynical. You get HR documenting your poor cultural fit. You get quietly managed out of the organization. In an economic system where losing your job means falling off a digital cliff, strategic ignorance is a survival mechanism. Benightment is comfortable. Benightment pays the bills. But this assumes people can see through the benightment, a challenge that for many is insurmountable because of the closed rational logic under which the system operates and which labels all antithetical thought as inherently irrational. And even if you wanted to voice the truth, the system has taken away your tools to do so. It has corrupted your language. Early 20th century German philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein noted in his philosophical musings on language that the limits of our language mean the limits of our world. That is to say, what cannot be said cannot be thought. According to this view, we cannot look at the world from the outside. We can only experience and conceptualize reality through the linguistic framework we possess. The horizon of our language is the horizon of our reality. While the implications of this thought are many, one is that language can be and is deployed as a weapon to control the very perception of reality and to limit what can be thought and expressed. Modern organizations have developed the highly sophisticated, sterilized dialect, managerial newspeak. Language in the modern workspace has been systematically hollowed out to ensure that it can never express an existential or moral truth. When a company fires 5,000 human beings via an automated email, the language doesn't say, "We destroyed 5,000 livelihoods." It says, "We are right-sizing our headcount to maximize strategic agility." When a workplace is so toxic and high pressure that employees are having panic attacks in the bathroom, the language calls it a fast-paced, high-performance culture of excellence. When the only approved vocabulary inside an organization is instrumental, pointing out a moral contradiction becomes literally impossible. You cannot critique the madness if the only words you are allowed to use are the ones designed to hide it. To make sure you don't notice this linguistic cage, organizations have turned your working life into a video game. This is the power of gamification. Through boards, point systems, performance tiers, sales leaderboards, and digital badges, companies have hijacked our brain's dopamine pathways. When you're playing a video game, you don't stop and ask, is the concept of capturing this digital castle a meaningful use of my finite time on Earth? You just want the points. You want to level up. By turning meaningless or deeply contradictory corporate tasks into a series of digital badges and performance metrics, organizations keep you focused on winning the game. We are so busy trying to hit our quarterly targets, so busy trying to move the digital sticky note from in progress to done, that we become totally blind to the fact that the entire game is a hallucination. Aporial benightment is not a victimless crime. The price we pay for this fabricated blindness is a profound systemic misery that plagues millions of workers worldwide. When we exist in intellectual darkness, when we pretend that our meaningless tasks make sense, our humanity doesn't just disappear, it rots from the inside out. We experience what philosophers call existential alienation. We feel deeply lonely, not because we are physically isolated, but because we spend 40 hours a week or more interacting with other people as functions, not as human beings. We use fake language, celebrate fake wins, and mourn fake losses. And the ultimate tragedy is how the system handles the suffering it causes. When the anxiety, the burnout, and the bone-deep exhaustion of living this lie break you, the hyper-rationalized organization hands you a final, insulting technical solution. It gives you a corporate wellness app. It tells you to take a deep breath. It invites you to a mandatory seminar on building personal resilience. To resolve Aporial benightment, assuming organizational leaders wish to do so, they cannot simply issue another mandate, as this adds to the aporia caused by the underlying epistemology and logic. A dialectical intervention and an epistemological break is required. The paradoxes and aporias cannot be resolved using the same reason and rationality, which are the epitome of Enlightenment thought, as this thought created the aporias in the first place. Rather, a complete shift in understanding is required, one which rejects the irrational rationality of Enlightenment-based thinking and embraces the human factor. Do you see the ultimate absurdity? The system creates an unnatural, toxic environment that makes you sick and then hands you the responsibility for curing yourself. It tells you that your misery isn't a sane, logical reaction to a broken world. Aporial benightment is the comfort of a manufactured matrix. It is the decision to keep eating the digital steak, even though you know it doesn't exist, because waking up means looking at a cold, gray reality. But the next time you feel that sudden, sharp pang of existential dread at your desk, don't suppress it. Don't hide in the darkness. Reclaim that clarity. That misery, that anger, that profound sense of absurdity is the last remaining part of your untamed humanity screaming out that you are still alive. You are a human being, not a resource, and no amount of organizational benightment will ever change that.